Hi, this is Curious Mystics Podcast. Together we explore the mysteries of the spiritual world, sometimes boldly,
sometimes cautiously,
but always with open hearts
and curious minds.
See you soon. Hello, our lovely mystic people.
Hello, welcome.
It's Erica from Curious Mystics Podcast.
Yeah.
How are we doing? We're both doing great.
We're on top of each other today, apparently.
Yeah.
What's been new? What's been up?
A lot. I feel like I did a class, like this little workshop on a Saturday with Beth Perkins, shamanic teacher a shamanic teacher out of California. And we were working with the Jaguar, and it was all about like quantum leaps. And I learned some really interesting things, which maybe we'll talk about on a different episode. But yeah, I feel like I did that. I feel like there was definitely a quantum leap. Like things just kicked into gear after last week, or 2 weeks ago, I guess it is now. And I'm just like, whoa, I don't know if I'm ready for all of this. So I feel like a little feel like I'm being pushed through the universe. I'm just like,
Isn't it amazing how that happens, where you can be on a journey and want to be on that journey, and then all of a sudden you're making these leaps and bounds and progress that you wanted, but you weren't necessarily ready for in that moment. And it's like, no, now you don't have a choice. You have to be ready.
Yeah, pretty much. And one of the things that she said during that you have to do it before you think you're ready, because you just plan and then you just never do it. Yeah, so yeah, that's where we're at.
Cool.
So yeah, so that's where I'm. Yeah, just this week has just been a little overwhelming because of all these exciting stuff. It's good stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Cool.
How about you?
Not much is going on here. We are fully in the midst of all of the things with, we have our ofrenda up, doing all of the things with these holidays, and just being very intentional, present, and with loved ones. I think that's kind of my takeaway from the past week or two.
Yeah, the new moon, I did do some work with the ancestors. I gave offerings to the ancestors and my family and stuff like that. So that was fun. That was good. Felt good, I guess, was the words I was trying to say.
Yeah, it can be a really intimate thing. At least I have found that it can be for me, but it's also something that can be really easy at the same time, which is interesting.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to be more, I kind of go on these ebbs and flows, I feel like, and I'm sure everybody does, about with my practice, trying to be mindful of a daily practice. So I'm trying to get, that kind of fell away the last week or so I'm trying to just get back into more practice. I was doing kind of the little daily things, while I was cooking or while I was making my coffee, but I need to get back to that, more, I don't know, what would you call it? More of a deeper practice daily. Not huge, but at least a little bit more with more intention, a specific sit down and do these things. I don't know that. How do you feel? How do you feel about stuff like that? Just curiously.
I don't know. I do the daily things that I do very consistently. There are some daily practices that I wish I did more, but I just don't always get to them. But the way that I start my day every day without fail looks the same and has for a while. I feel like my struggle is the bigger things, the monthly or the ritualistic things that might happen seasonally, or those are the ones that I struggle with a little bit more.
Yeah, same for that too. They have these books out there that the calendars that go by the lunar seasons and not by the Gregorian calendar, and I kind of want to get one and see how it is. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was just curious. I mean, I think for me, because I'm trying to, I do this I'm trying to do this as a practice with people for healing purposes and whatnot, that I feel like maybe I need to be a little bit more disciplined to be connected to that, what we call the shaman's net of power, a little bit more often, because I definitely feel when I start to drift from that, I get a little bit more chaotic, which I'm kind of a chaotic person to begin with. And then, when I'm drifting from that net, I can feel it. So
yeah, then it's like the chaos without the connection.
Mm-hmm. It's okay to have chaos with connection, but without connection, it gets a little too overwhelming.
With intention and purpose and drive.
Right, exactly.
I get it.
All right.
Well, we'll talk a little bit about, maybe we'll talk a little bit about some of that stuff today, but what we're going to cover today is, I'm going to say this in like a very broad sense, and this is not an all-encompassing topic that we're talking about today, but ancient Indian culture in like big picture is what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
I was thinking about, as I do with probably most of the episodes that I do research for, I think about, what do I know about it off the bat without doing any research? Just what is my understanding of this topic, and then trying to like dive deeper and get clarity and learn more. So the things that came to mind right off the top of my head was yoga, astrology, and religion. And so we're going to break those down into like a little bit more in depth, because I think that is a very big picture way of looking at what Indian culture has provided to the world.
Yeah, and I feel like if you are an outsider from Indian culture, that's kind of the first things you think about, maybe. And maybe, I mean, I'd love to know what that actually means from an Indian culture.
Yeah. So going a little bit more into the realm of religion and spirituality, I'm going to start there. It just seems like the most logical place to start. So with something like Hinduism is considered to be one of like the first oldest religions in the world that is still practiced today. That being said, not everyone views it as a religion.
Okay.
So there is some distinctions there depending on the point of view that you're looking at it from.
I assume you're going to explain that?
Yeah.
Okay.
At the center of it all, there is the core tenet of like rebirth. Rebirth happens after death. Life and death is a continuous cycle, and there is no beginning and no end, essentially. It's just something that's constantly happening. However, karma is part of that. So the actions of this life will impact the actions or outcomes of other lives. The reason why some people say it's a religion and others don't has more to do with the philosophies of it. So some people look at religion and think, okay, there's a very clear definition, there's very clear tenets, there's very clear rules to practicing this religion. And with Hinduism, it's not so clear. It's not just this is the right way, that is the right way. It's more of a way of life. There is an understanding that the truth of whatever it is you're looking at can be different based on circumstances, based on your point of view, based on your age, your gender, your society, your experiences. Like, everything can impact what the truth is. So from that sense, it wouldn't necessarily be thought of as a religion by some people who practice it, because it's not so clear cut. Like, this is, if you go into the Bible says XYZ, and so that's it. That's the only option. Whereas in Hinduism, it's not that.
So are people maybe liking it to, when someone says they're a pagan, it's like they might consider it from themselves as a religion, but it's like not like anything that's really defined?
Maybe.
I don't know. We haven't talked about paganism.
Hey friends, we just wanted to take a moment to remind you all that you can interact with us on social media. We can be found at Curious Mystics Podcast on all platforms.
And if you haven't already, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share so that we can keep showing up for you guys with new weekly episodes and content. Thank you for hanging out with us so far, and stay curious.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I haven't really looked at it from that lens, but I guess that could be true. I think the idea between defining it as a religion or not a religion has just more to do with that, like, it's not just one way to practice. There is not only one right way to practice.
Okay.
So, but the core of Hinduism and what is taken from it and how people study it and put it into practice comes from the Vedas, which are ancient texts. There's multiple different texts from different types of ancient times that inform this religion or way of life. And so there's a lot of different like rituals that come from those texts, a lot of different philosophies, a lot of different perspectives and things that you can consider, and we'll get into some of those. And then, like I said, there's like this core belief that the truth is multifaceted. And so when you're searching for truth, regardless of who you are, there is a push that you should be searching for the truth from multiple sources. You should not be just taking one, hey, I read this in the ancient Veda text, and so that's the only thing that I'm going to say is the truth. But there is encouragement to search for the truth from different perspectives.
I mean, I feel like that makes sense and is a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So from that way, I think like you and I are constantly having conversations about like science, and science will say XYZ, and does that mean that's it, that's the truth, and there's nothing else to it? And in reality, that might not be the case. There could be other perspectives to consider. There could be things that are overlooked or not considered. There could be different experiences that inform what that outcome or truth might be. So that's kind of what I thought of when I was reading about this. The biggest thing that like I always think of with Hinduism is karma, Buddhism, which we'll also talk about. But it was like beautiful, I think, to read that there's more of this like philosophy for life of, you know, searching for the truth and not taking just one thing at face value and that's it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's beautiful, and I think that it fosters. I feel like that's healthy. I feel like sometimes religion gets very bogged down into the dogma and the rituals and this, that, and the other, and there is no room for interpretation or growth or like thinking on your own. And so then there's no way to grow it.
Yeah.
So.
And taking into account like bigger aspects of it too. I mean, even in some places where this is practiced, there's an understanding that it was rooted in and born out of like South Asian culture. So if you're practicing Hinduism in the West, that might look different just because society looks different, because beliefs look different. And so it doesn't mean that that's wrong and this is right. It just means that you have to consider those things when you're looking at it.
And it's ancient, so like it might need to evolve a little.
It might need to be updated a little. Yeah, definitely. And then some of the other main religions that came from this, and these would be more religious than Hinduism, would be Buddhism and Jainism. And so you had mentioned those in another episode that we had talked about, but these were founded following the Vedic age. So Hinduism was established, and then these two were kind of offshoots from there. They do accept some parts of Hinduism, and then they reject other parts of Hinduism.
Okay.
So Buddhism was created by, and I'm sorry, but I'm not going to pronounce the name because I know that I'm not going to get it right, but by the Buddha in the 6th century. And the primary focus for Buddhism is achieving enlightenment. So the Buddha is the enlightened one who kind of used this model as like everyone should be achieving or striving for enlightenment. There are 4 main truths, the noble truths that come with Buddhist beliefs, and those are that life is suffering. So pleasures can exist in life, but even with those pleasures, they don't last indefinitely, and we suffer wanting for the pleasures. So life is suffering is the first truth. The second truth is that suffering is caused by craving physical things, craving change, craving. The third, suffering does have an end. And the fourth noble truth is that the means to that end is an 8-fold path in the middle way, and those lead you to nirvana. And that's where you end suffering. So I still, even in doing some research, I don't know enough about Buddhism. However, my encounters with people who practice Buddhism have often been in the realm of recovery. People recovering from substance use, and I think there's this very deep connection with that life is suffering, suffering being caused by craving, suffering can have an end, and your goal is to reach nirvana.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, I'm not sure I like the idea of life being suffering, but if you look at it at kind of like a base level,
yeah,
it's true.
Yeah.
Because we're always kind of wanting. You know, there's always like, you want something. So, yeah.
I think the other perspective that I take to this, it is that life is suffering, but just like a reframe of that for me is that we are constantly on a journey searching for the end and overlooking the journey. And so like life is suffering, life is the journey, and the end, whatever end result you're looking for, you know, that is ultimately nirvana and the end of your suffering. But I think like as humans, we are constantly looking for the next thing. We reach a goal. What's the next goal?
Right.
We make progress. Where else can we do work? We're constantly looking for more. So that's just, I don't know, that kind of just like resonated to me in that way. With Buddhism in particular, there are a lot of different sects or splits off of like the main original Buddhist way of life. And that has a lot to do with what was lacking. And I'm going to put that in air quotes, what was lacking in Buddhism, because the Buddha would not answer certain questions. So whether or not humans have a soul, the Buddha never answered. So there are certain Buddhist religions that do try to answer that question, that do point you in a certain direction. The Buddha would not appoint a successor. So there are certain Buddhist religions who do still try to find like someone who is the Buddha now or Buddha-like now.
Well, is in the religion, did he pass on? Did Buddha pass on? Oh, okay.
Yeah, so yes, and he left it to everyone to use the tenets that he has set forth for people to find their path.
Okay, so people are looking for a leader.
Yeah.
To take up his teachings. Got it.
Yeah. So that was kind of like the core of Buddhism. And then Jainism, which was also founded around the same time. There's different reports. Like some people say there is a specific person who founded Jainism. However, other reports say that that person was actually the like 24th person to reach the highest level of Jainism. So I didn't include in my notes that there was any specific person that created it because there's just a lot of discrepancy around that and I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So some of the tenets around Jainism is that there's no belief in a creator or a god, but there are beliefs in higher beings, and those higher beings are mortal. So they're not divine, they're not godlike, they're not above in that way, but they are people who have, or maybe not people, but higher beings who are mortal and have achieved the highest level of Jainism.
Okay. Well, I'm like, it coming to mind are like ancient, like kind of these other ancient beings, of Lemurians that we've talked about, or like some of these other ancient people that kind of are no longer around or may be around or are in secret, but we don't really, like they're talked about and they're like whispers of, but we don't really know if they existed or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that's like interesting when you're doing some of this research is, you know, on the face of it, for me, when we talk about spirituality, if a person is referring to a higher being or a god or whatever, there is usually an understanding that there is an immortal nature there. So in this aspect, it was very clear that the higher beings are mortal and there is no single creator. And again, as with Buddhism and Hinduism, karma is a very central tenet of the religion. The goal of Jainism is to be released from the cycle of karma, to be liberated from being reborn with karmic debt. There are 5 vows in Jainism that help guide the religion, and it was very clear that these 5 vows are as important in action as they are in thought. So I'll go through them and then we'll talk about what that means. But the 5 vows are nonviolence, speaking truth, non-stealing, chastity or faithfulness to your spouse, and non-attachment. And the way that you practice these things, if you're practicing genuinely, is not just nonviolence, not just not being violent toward others, but also not thinking about violence. If you have a moment of road rage and you have a thought of violence that comes up, then you are not genuinely practicing Jainism. And the reason for that is just that, like, the understanding that your thoughts create your reality.
So my nightly wanting to smother my husband with a pillow because he snores, I'd be in trouble.
Yes, like, you're doing good on not acting on it, but you shouldn't be having that thought either.
Definitely am not acting on it, but it comes to mind often.
Yeah. The reason I said the road rage thing is because that happens to me all the time. And not for nothing, but personally, and this is why I could never practice Jainism, I get some relief when I, tell somebody off in my car.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I feel better now. And then usually I follow that up with, you know what, I'm sorry, like, they should have, maybe, I don't know what's going on in their life. Maybe they're a new driver, or maybe they're, have their own reasons for driving the way they do. Like, I have no idea what's going on with them, but I don't like the way that they just impacted me.
They negatively impacted me, and I did not like it.
Yeah.
I hear you.
So then I flip them off or something. I don't know.
Yeah, so we cannot be Jainists.
No.
We are not good at this.
No. From these three, and these are not the only three religions in Indian culture, but these are the three that I just pointed out because they are very well known. From these three, I would say that I think I most align with, like, the Hindu perspectives and thought processes, those philosophies. That would be one that I'd want to do a deeper dive into, but yeah, I don't know. I didn't realize how important some of these other aspects were, like having, I don't like the idea of not having an answer to whether or not humans have a soul.
Yeah.
I didn't like that.
And I didn't realize that was one of the tenets, which is interesting though, because they believe in, like, rebirth. So what rebirths? Right?
That's a great question.
What part of me is rebirthing? Like my toe? I don't...
Your karmic energy is rebirthing.
Oh, okay.
I would imagine. I don't know.
That makes sense.
I don't know how else that would work.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
I didn't like that, and I don't like any of the tenets. Well, not that I don't like the tenets of Jainism, but I don't like that you have to be very, very much practicing them internally and externally.
Right.
For me, I find that sometimes I can have some thoughts that aren't the greatest, and that doesn't mean that I'm going to act on them. And I would imagine, from a mental health perspective, that people who experience, like, intrusive thoughts, which is a very distressing thing, and people who experience intrusive thoughts don't want to be having those intrusive thoughts, but that could be challenging because then you're having thoughts against your will that you don't want to be having, that are distressing, but they could potentially be going against what your religious
I feel
beliefs
like
are.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's ways that they recommend that you work through that sort of thing with Jainism, but I feel like at a surface level looking at it, it looks like you're kind of like rejecting a lot of yourself. And I don't know if, how healthy for mental health that would be. Because, I mean, no one's perfect, You can't be perfect 24/7, but... Yeah,
exactly.
And I want to say I'm not making fun of any religion or anything. I'm just saying, like, from a surface level, listening to this, my thoughts.
No, I agree. And these are just, like, very, very, very surface level aspects of each of these. It's not anything that's all encompassing. I didn't get into any, I didn't dive deep into any of these because there is so much. I mean, we're talking about things that are ancient, so they've been around forever, and with that comes a lot of knowledge, understanding, nuances, specifics, I'm sure. Yeah. So those were, like, the religious part, a little bit of that. The next thing that kind of came up was yoga, and this is, like, a natural flow of things. I'm trying to think of, like, how to put this. I was really frustrated. I'm just going to say that. I was really frustrated in doing my research in yoga because everything that I was trying to look up, the first things that were coming up, and this can... Okay. Let me pause for a second because I want to pull it back. Everything that I was looking up, the first things that were coming up were from people who are not Indian, of Indian descent. And there is a place for that, and I'm not mad that that's happening. I'm mad that it took me so much effort to find Indian sources. Like, it wasn't page 1, it wasn't page 2, it wasn't the first search, it wasn't the third search. The way in which I had to do research in order to find the information from a source that I wanted to find it from was ridiculous.
Yeah, I've seen that discussion. One, I agree with you. I've seen that discussion a lot more recently, especially like through social media and stuff, where it's just like, but the problem, I don't know, whatever, is that the way yoga got to the United States is it was brought by white people.
Yeah.
By white women.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or that might not even be true. But I think it was brought by people that were not of Indian descent, and then a lot of people, white women especially, kind of like got into it and used it as a way to... And there's nothing wrong with it as far as like yoga itself, but I think we need to understand and be aware that this started and is very much a cultural thing in India.
Yes.
So.
Yes, I agree 1,000,000%. And I think one of the challenges for me in doing some of this research is there are so many different practices for yoga. There's so many different things that you could focus on. There's so many different ways of going about it and how to incorporate it. And that's what you find when you do like a Google search for yoga or the origins of yoga. That's what you find. And none of that gives you the origin. None of that gives you the ideas and practices in its original form for you to then go down one of those. It's not that any of those are less legitimate, because they are very legitimate, but being able to know like what's at the core of this and what are the stepping stones that you take to get to one of those practices, that was a frustrating thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I finally did find some information that I wanted to look through, I learned, which I didn't know, the belief that yoga has existed since the beginning of civilization and before any religions were formed. So it's kind of coming before. It's a spiritual practice, and it very much is a spiritual practice, but it's coming before any spirituality turned into religion. The main goal of yoga in its original form is to attain self-realization, to overcome suffering, and to be in oneness. And we have talked about oneness before. We discussed that as one of the universal laws. I think it was 12 universal laws that we had talked about.
Yeah.
But the understanding that everything is one, everything is connected in some way. And so achieving that oneness is also a part of the goal of yoga.
Very beautiful.
Yeah. And kind of going beyond what we might see. Yes, yoga is an exercise practice. Yes, it is a physical practice. It involves the stretching and movement and poses and, all of that. But it's so much more than that. That's just the beginning. That's just the start of it. In the bigger picture, yoga incorporates breath very intentionally, very specific types of breath work. And again, if you're using certain paths of yoga, then you might be focusing on different types of breath work, or you might be focusing on breath in a different way than in other paths. It incorporates mind, so what your internal experience is, and also the inner self. So bringing all of these together helps you to create that spiritual experience.
Yeah, I always understood it to allow you to get into a meditative state and to get into a deeper meditative state. It's kind of like the lead up to it.
Yeah.
To get your body ready for that meditative state. That's kind of how I understood how it was used.
Yeah. And there's a whole part of it that can be very intentional with how you do that. How do you get into that meditative state? And the obstacles that could come in your way too. There are parts of yoga that do cover dissociation and disconnecting from others, disconnecting from self. Because if the goal is to be in oneness, then you have to also acknowledge that you might not be in oneness. And what does that look like within your practice?
Yeah.
So in reality, there are many, many, many facets to it that are quite frankly overlooked all of the time. I think it can be very helpful for people to engage with yoga as an exercise, as part of a daily routine, or to just focus on one of these aspects, right? If I just want to focus on breath work, but I want to do that while I'm doing yoga, great. If I want to focus on meditation, mindfulness, whatever, while doing yoga, let me do that. Not a problem. But in the big picture, if you want to practice it at its core, you have to acknowledge that all of these parts are important.
Mm-hmm.
And you should be intentional about that. So personally, this is one of those things where I have wanted to engage with yoga in an authentic way. And it's something that I think I still need to find. Like, I can't find any practices around my area that are quite what I'm looking for.
Yeah, there used to be a place in town. It was great. The people that owned it were very mindful of that, and they had different practices based on kind of what you were looking for and they always kind of brought it back to like that breath work and mindfulness and like bringing it back to yourself type situation, but also had different type of classes. And they ended up closing, which is really upsetting because the owner wanted to pursue other things, and I was like, it was really good. It was a really good place. I really liked it because I've done yoga before and just been like completely disconnected and did not like it, and it was like not for me. And I think probably because of the way it was presented, like it wasn't presented from this place of, I guess, inner growth. It was from a place of fitness,
Yeah. So, I mean, if that's what you're looking for, then sure, there's something for you there. You can find it. Understanding that there can be so much more, and you don't necessarily want to overlook that. So, yeah. Also, I kind of, like, I don't know if you've ever done any of these things. There's like, you know how they incorporate like animals in yoga, like hot yoga with goats or pigs or whatever. Like, that fascinates me as a thing, but I can't see it being something that would be an inclusive spiritual practice.
No. I mean, I don't, The idea of doing yoga, having something jumping around me does not, although it might be fun, I don't think it would be achieving what I would want it to achieve.
Yeah. Agreed. Okay, so that was kind of like the big overarching stuff with yoga. And then the other piece, astrology. And this one is also something that is very widely known and many people use in their own spiritual practices in different ways, right? Like, some people are very much about astrology in general and will focus on that in a daily practice. And other times it's like, if Mercury's in retrograde, which, we love, then we just want to be aware of that so that we're not, like signing contracts or things like that. But
Right.
But in Vedic astrology, also coming from the same ancient texts that inform Hinduism and other philosophies, there is the utilization of sidereal zodiac. I think that's how you say that, the sidereal zodiac. So in the United States, we tend to use Western astrology, and Western astrology focuses on the tropical zodiac, which is looking at the seasons and the constellations where they are in the seasons. The sidereal zodiac looks at the positions of the constellations in the sky, not considering the seasons. So we're not centering Earth and Earth's movements in Vedic astrology. We're centering the sky.
Just the sky.
Yes. Because of that, there can be overlapping things, but there can also be things that are different from Vedic astrology to Western astrology. So some of those things might be like dates and timing. When we're looking at Western astrology, let's say you know that your sun sign is, or my sun sign is Aquarius. In Vedic astrology, it may not be. And I haven't looked it up to see if it's different. And I'm actually like right on the cusp of Capricorn and Aquarius. So in Vedic astrology, I might be Capricorn or Pisces. I might be a different sign. Right. Vedic astrology also places more of an emphasis on the rising sign instead of the sun sign. So in Western astrology, your sun sign is, it's how you're described. If you go into a newspaper and look at the horoscope, you're looking for your sun sign.
Right.
In Vedic astrology, you're looking for your rising sign.
I have heard that more recently as what you should be looking at.
Yeah.
More recently. But
yeah,
I don't think that's really known mostly.
Yeah. No, I agree. I've also been hearing that more lately. But in general, it's not what, I think unless you're in these spaces, you're not really hearing that or knowing
Right.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Or even knowing that you have, your sun, moon, rising.
Yeah, I had no clue until more recently.
Yeah. So Vedic astrology does place more emphasis on the rising sign. It also places more emphasis on the moon in general, as opposed to the sun. So in Western astrology, the sun plays a big role in our seasons. It plays a big role in our day-to-day, and that is shown in how the astrology looks. In Vedic astrology, they're not considering the sun because they're not considering the seasons. Not that they're not considering it, but it is not playing as big of a role.
Well, do they have as many seasons? Their seasons are different, right?
Yeah.
Because it's more like kind of like rainy season, not rainy season.
Yes.
Right? So I guess that probably would be why it wouldn't be as connected.
Yeah. Yeah, and that makes sense. And again, coming back to what we were talking about before with Hinduism, it's like you got to take those things into account, right? Like where you're at. So. And then the other thing that might look a little different with Vedic astrology is like your birth chart. So if we do our birth charts here, what you typically see is a circle divided into 12 houses. You have your sun, you have all of the signs, you have all of the placements. In Vedic astrology, your birth chart is not a circle, it's a square. That is divided equally into 12 parts, so there's still 12 houses, but that also means that where things lie in one chart may lie in a different place in another chart.
Yeah, that makes sense. Interesting.
Yeah, so it's just something to consider when you're exploring astrology and figuring out how to incorporate it, if you're incorporating it in your practices, in your spiritual practices at all. There are different ways of looking at it and, finding maybe what calls to you more, what makes more sense, or how you can use them. There's a lot more big picture. There's a lot more things in Western astrology that can be pretty straightforward. Like there's a lot of information to cover. There's a lot of things that you can do and learn with Western astrology. But like, I'm going to use this as an example and it's a hypothetical, but like, let's just say that in Western astrology, these three big traits, and that determines what Aquarius is. In Vedic astrology, there might be a lot more nuance to that. So there can be more information, which makes it maybe a little bit more challenging to learn. Yeah. So I think in doing some of the research that I was doing, it was just interesting to see how, like, what's at the core of each of these things, how they are used in these practices, whether you're talking about spirituality, religion, yoga, astrology, any of the above, but also how much they can inform so many other things that we've talked about. When we're talking about the universal laws, when you're talking about your personal philosophies, when you're talking about your practices and rituals and, so many things that you might do anyway. I'd be curious to know how many people might find that some of their practices stem from some of these cultures.
Yeah. Well, I think like the United States is such a melting pot that I'm sure something has been influenced by something, So,
Definitely.
very interesting. Yeah, I didn't know a lot of this, so.
And like I said, there's so much to it, and this is like a barely scratching the surface. So if you want to know more, definitely do some research, but there can be a lot of really good information to be found out there.
And let us know if you want to go to a deep dive on something else. We can, like, something like, do you want to deep dive on yoga? Do you want to deep dive on any of these subjects? Just let us know, and we will do it. So, all right. Well, that was awesome.
Yeah. So until next time,
Stay
curious.
Bye.